Hey guys, how you doing? DJ 12 back again with another installment of 12's Kitchen. Been on this food journey so far. It's been really great. I hope you guys have learned a lot. I got another good dish on deck for you guys tonight. So stay tuned. It's 12's Kitchen. I'm DJ 12. Let's get things started. Alright, well, welcome back guys. So, in our very first episode, we tackled a monumental task of butchering a chicken. And due to FDA, FCC, Motion Picture Association of America rules, I cannot show you the massacre that took place on that chicken that I butchered. Actually, I butchered two. And I actually butchered them pretty well, with the exception of the fact that since my knives weren't very sharp, it was just ugly. And again, I hadn't broken the chicken down in over a year or so. So it was my first time doing it in a while. So the first one went kind of clunky. And again, my knives weren't sharp. That's my built-in excuse. I'm so sorry. But due to the fact that there may be kids watching, I definitely don't want to show you that massacre. However, we butchered the chicken. In a previous episode, we took some chicken parts and made oven roasted chicken. Tonight we're going to use the breast, and I have deboned the breast in this case, and we're going to make a braised chicken breast dish with a pan sauce. So stay tuned. DJ 12 got it going for you. Get ready to show you my mise en place in a second, and we'll be right back. Thanks so much for tuning in to 12's Kitchen. Alright, again, like I always like to emphasize, making sure your mise en place is ready to go. Mise en place is a French term for everything in its place. And we got pretty much everything we're going to be using to make this meal tonight. Again, you know, DJ 12 is all about simplicity in the kitchen and making sure that I'm efficient as well. And so we're going to make some really good dishes with very few ingredients. You'd be surprised at how well you can make a gourmet quality dish with just some simple quality ingredients. So salt and pepper for seasoning. Of course, we got diced shallots and minced garlic. Of course, our homemade chicken stock as a result of our first episode. The butcher chicken breast that I actually removed the bones and the skin from. White wine and olive oil. And my cooking vessels. We're going to steam some broccoli and we're going to get our braise of the chicken going in our Dutch oven this evening. Got the plate set to the side because we're going to set the chicken to the side once it is done browning. So, mise en place in place. We are ready to get cooking. Come on back, y'all. 12 got something for you tonight. Alright, so we're ready to get started on this braised chicken. So, got our Dutch oven over medium heat. We're going to add about 2 tablespoons of olive oil to the Dutch oven. And we're going to let that heat up until it's ready to saute or pan sear this chicken breast. And just like when we were doing the chicken pieces, the legs and thighs in one of our previous episodes, once you get the oil in the pan over medium heat, and again, we're not deep frying here, and since we're using olive oil, something with a low smoke point, we want to make sure we pay attention to the pan as the oil heats up. So we're looking for a slight shimmer in our oil, as well as, grab these tongs, as well as some light smoke. Once you get a little bit of that light smoke coming out off the top of the oil, That's when you know your pan is hot enough to go ahead and start sauteing your chicken. If it's any hotter than that, you run the risk of scorching or burning your chicken and getting more of a deeper caramelization than you may be initially looking for. So we're just going to wait for this to heat up slightly, and once it's ready to go, we're going to drop our chicken breast in and get it started to saute. Another thing, since we are using the oven to braise this chicken tonight, I've already preset my oven and got it preheated to 375 degrees. So 350 to 375 for your chicken. As long as you're cooking it to an internal temperature of 165 degrees, you should be okay. These chicken breasts are, I pre-seasoned these. Look at these chicken breasts here. I pre-seasoned them, tossed them in a little bit of olive oil, and let them sit in the marinade basically overnight. It's a little dry marinade with a little bit of olive oil. Switch this oil around a little bit. Make sure it's coating the bottom of the pan evenly. Make sure my pan is set directly over the flame. And you know, occasionally you'll see me put my hand in. You can usually get a good idea how hot the pan is by just placing your hand a few inches from the surface. But if you're scared to do that, you can just, again, look for the light wisps of smoke that rise from the oil. Or you can take your trusty wooden spoon and dip it in the oil to see if you get any bubbles. So far, this oil is not quite hot enough to saute or brown my chicken. Speaking of which, while we're on the subject of browning our chicken, since we're using this an oil with a lower smoke point, you want to make sure, again, that you're controlling and watching the heat so that when you drop your protein into the pan, or in this case the Dutch oven, you get that good sizzle. That'll let you know you're going to have a good even brown caramelization on the both sides of your chicken. So you don't want a gentle sizzle, because if it's too gentle when you put the chicken in or whatever protein, that means you're more than likely going to not get a hard enough sear or a good enough browning on the protein. And if it is too violent of a sear, then you are more than likely going to get, as we alluded to previously, that scorched earth chicken. So we don't want that. Not quite hot enough yet, although I can see the bubbles. So we're pretty close here. I'm just looking for a couple of wisps of smoke, and sometimes you have to, oh, there's the smoke. So we're ready to go ahead and start sauteing this chicken. Alright, so get my tongs in here, and we are going to get the chicken into the Dutch oven. Alright? Nice healthy sizzle, which means we're going to get a nice brown on the chicken. Alright, and once the chicken is in the Dutch oven, in order to get that nice even sear on the bottom, you're going to put it in and you're going to leave it. You're more than likely going to sear it for about 3 to 4 minutes per side. Check your heat there, make sure you're not too hot, and let that get nice and evenly brown before you turn it over. Alright? So we're going to let this go for a second and we'll be right back. Get a little up close and personal here, so that's what we're looking for. If you can hear that, that nice good sizzle to let you know that they're cooking nice and evenly. If you notice a little bit of white is starting to rise, that means they're starting to cook. And we're only going to cook these part of the way through. We're going to finish cooking them in the oven with some braising liquid, and we're going to braise this chicken and make it nice and tender. The one thing about cooking with boneless breast as opposed to bone-in breast is it's usually better to braise to help retain moisture of the chicken as opposed to like bacon or just pan searing and oven roasting the chicken breast without the bone. So in this case we're going to braise to retain some of that liquid, and as opposed to when we made the roasted chicken where we built the sauce from the remains of the pan after finishing roasting the chicken, in this case we're going to build our sauce from the braising liquid. But I think these are about ready to be turned over, so I'm going to go ahead and flip these right about now. Oh yeah. Look at that. Alright, after about 3 minutes, 3-4 minutes per side, get that nice golden brown. That's exactly what you're looking for. Whatever the white spot is for me, is for me peaking a little bit too early. So you want to, like I said, once you put them into the pan, you kind of want to let them go so they can develop that nice crust. Like I said, the little white spot is going to be picking it up a little bit too soon and not allowing that crust to form. Also, I may have used just slightly a little bit more oil. So usually about a tablespoon is good enough. Maybe a little bit more if you have, if you're cooking more chicken or you are using a more shallow pan. So we're going to let this go about another minute or so, and then we're going to get these out and get started on our aromatics and our braised meat. Alright? Alright, nice and golden brown, just like we like to see. We're just going to set them aside on a plate for now, because remember, these are not fully cooked. We just want to brown them outside, on the outside, so we can build up that font on the bottom of the pan so that we can use that to help build up our sauce. So, we're going to set these aside on a plate for now. We're going to tint them with some aluminum foil, and then we're going to turn our attention back to our Dutch oven with our aromatics. Alright, now after you've gotten your chicken out of the Dutch oven, you may or may not need to add more oil. If in this case it looks like I have just enough oil to sweat down my shallots, so we're going to just gauge it and see once we get the shallots in. But see all that brown, those brown bits at the bottom? You're definitely looking for that. That's called font, and that is going to add body and depth to our sauce. Alright, so what we're going to do right now is let the oil come back up to temperature, and then we're going to drop our shallots in and get started on our base for our sauce. Alright, so our oil is back up to temp. We are going to now drop in our diced shallots to build the flavor base for our sauce. Throw those in there. Hit them with just a little bit of salt and pepper. Just a little bit. Lower that heat just a tiny bit. The shallots are not going to take as long to sweat out as the onions will. So you want to just keep an eye on them and just make sure you're stirring them pretty good, working them around the bottom of the pan. And you're looking to make these translucent. You just really want to soften them up so that they're not so prominent in your sauce. And in some cases, you may or may not, once you get your chicken out of the braised liquid and you start to build your sauce from the braised liquid in the pan, you may want to strain it to remove the shallots and or onions. I'm going with shallots tonight as opposed to onions. Normally I would actually put onions in this dish. But the shallots are a little milder than onions and have a little more of a sweetness. So it's a different depth of flavor for your pan sauce that you're going to build once you get the chicken out of the braised liquid. So we're going to saute these down until they're nice and soft before we add our garlic and then our white wine to deglaze. Now, speaking of garlic, I put fresh garlic, and I think I mentioned this before, I put fresh garlic in almost everything I make. Alright? So, but the thing about garlic is, if you are inexperienced with using this aromatic here, it can come back to bite you in the, tailbone there. So, you want to make sure that you add the garlic at the right time so you don't burn it. And the right time so you don't burn it is when the shallots and or onions or other aromatics, whether it's celery or celery or bell pepper or carrots, you want to make sure they're nice and soft and basically ready for you to deglaze before you add the garlic in, because the garlic can burn very fast, and you don't want burnt garlic in any of your dishes, whether you're using fresh garlic with some garlic green beans, or whether you're putting your garlic in a sauce or whatever. You definitely don't want to burn the garlic. And it's a very while it's so powerful and very aromatic and very strong, very tasty, if you mishandle the garlic, it can go really poorly for you. So we've been working these shallots around a little bit. Like I said, these are not going to require as lengthy a cooking time as some finely diced onion. I'm going to add just a tiny bit of oil. Just a tiny bit. But they still add a really great flavor. These shallots add a really great flavor to any sauce. And I'm still on the fence about whether or not I'm going to strain out the sauce or not, but we shall see. Alright, so the shallots have softened. We're going to go ahead and throw in our garlic now. And this is roughly about 4 cloves of chopped garlic. I'm only going to use about half of it. Only about half, a little bit more. Alright, once you get the garlic in the pan, you want to work it around quickly. Because again, you don't want it to burn. And you're going to cook it until roughly about 30 seconds to a full minute. You're going to cook this minced garlic down until it's aromatic, until you can smell the garlic. Okay? When you smell the garlic, then you know that you've cooked it long enough, and now you're ready to deglaze. So, to deglaze, as we mentioned before, we're going to crank up the heat. Alright, and we are going to grab our white wine. And we're going to roughly put in about a half a cup of white wine to deglaze our pan. Alright? So nice and high. You want to get that. Now is when you want to get that angry sizzle when you throw in your liquid to deglaze. Alright? I know you heard it. I know you heard it. Alright. So now we want to drop the heat back down. And we want to stir up any of the brown bits at the bottom of the pan. This is basically going to unstick all the font. Remember that word, font. The remains of the brownage of the chicken. Deglazing the pan is going to get all of that font up, all that flavor into your sauce. And here's the thing about your sauce too. Remember this. Alright, so we've started the process of deglazing the pan. And we're just going to let that wine cook off and reduce by about half. But going back to sauce, the better you season your chicken, or whatever protein you're going to use to then build the sauce from, usually you don't have to put too much more seasoning into the sauce. I mean, of course, at the end, you're going to taste to check the consistency and the flavor to find out if it's to your liking. And you can add seasonings then, but also remember, as you reduce the braised liquid in this case, which is what we're going to use to develop our pan sauce. As you reduce that liquid, it becomes more concentrated, and the salt content just increases. So just remember that when you are working on a pan sauce. Alright? So we're going to let this go about another minute or so to reduce the wine just a little bit to cook off the alcohol content. Alright, so we'll be right back real shortly. Stay tuned. Okie dokie. So, our deglazing liquid, our white wine, and again, dry white table wines work best. Sauvignon Blanc, Chardonnay work really good. I would stay away from sweeter wines like the Pinot Grigios and whatnot. But a dry white table wine is really good in an application such as this. Alright, so we are at the stage now where we're about to start building our braise. And get the foil off. I'm going to start by getting the chicken back in. Okay, chicken back in. Alright, then we're going to take our homemade chicken stock here. It's about 2 cups worth. And we want to pour that in. And get it about a halfway to 3/4 cup up 3/4 of the way up the chicken. You don't want to completely cover the chicken in this case, or you're going to have a chicken stew as opposed to braised chicken, but a little bit more than halfway is fine. That's just about all 2 cups of my chicken stock there. Alright, and on the plate that we use to, you can see that there, to rest the chicken, we're going to pour them drippings and juices right back in. Alright, we're going to turn up our heat a little bit, and then we're going to watch this, and we want to get this to come up to a boil, then reduce it to simmer before we throw it into the oven to get braising and get cooked all the way through. And once it's finished braising, we will build our sauce from the liquid, the braising liquid that's still in the Dutch oven. So, oh, it's already starting to boil just a little bit. And when we say boil, we don't mean like full on rolling boil, but just a slight boil is good enough before we reduce it to simmer. So we're going to let that go till it comes up, and we'll be right back. Alright, so as you can see, we got a nice boil going already. Nice steady boil, not too hard. So what we're going to do now is reduce the heat and lower it to simmer. So remember these letters: BTB, bring to boil; RTS, reduce to simmer. And we're really going to let it simmer for about a minute or so before we cover it and place it in the oven. This is the standard braising process, and you could do this with the boneless chicken breast, but you can also do this with bone-in chicken as well. So, you know, smothered chicken ain't nothing but a braise. You know what I'm saying? So, and that's good eating right there. So, I just like to do it with the chicken breast. I prefer white meat to dark, although sometimes I do like a good leg and thigh. Oh man, don't get me started on wings. We're not even gonna go there because it's the chicken breast show right now. So, reduce to simmer. Let it cook for about another minute or so. Then we're going to cover this, place it in the oven for roughly, you know, the chicken is like halfway cooked at this point. The internal temperature needs to get to 165. Based on the size of these chicken breasts, I anticipate it being no more than about 20 minutes or so in the oven, braising in the liquid. So we're going to go ahead and get this covered and then get it into the oven. 375 for, we'll set the timer for about 25 minutes. So we will be back with the results and get the chicken out of the liquid and get started with our braise. We'll be right back. All right, so our chicken has finished braising, or we believe it has finished braising. So we're going to get it out of the braising liquid and check the internal temperature just to make sure that we reached 165 degrees Fahrenheit, and then we're going to turn our attention right back to this sauce. All right. All right, so we are checking the internal temperature of our chicken breasts just to make sure they're done. And like I said, you want to make sure these are at 165. Yep, 165 there. Cool off. 165 there. And until you can properly gauge the cooking times based on the size of the chicken, you want to always make sure you're using a thermometer, a meat thermometer, to ensure that you have the correct temperature, because, you know, we want to make sure we don't give anyone any foodborne illnesses. That includes yourself and anybody else that you're serving. So check the temperature. We're going to temp these, and we're going to turn our attention right back to the sauce. Okay, as promised, we have turned our attention back to the sauce, and you may or may not have noticed, but I did decide to strain it to get the shallots and the garlic out, but that flavor still remains inside the sauce, guaranteed. So we're going to do the same thing we did previously with the oven roasted chicken, where we are going to bring this braising liquid to a boil, and then we're going to reduce it to simmer. And when we say boil, we don't mean a hard rolling boil, but a nice soft gentle boil, and then reduce it to simmer to allow the liquid to reduce. And once it does, we will be able to serve it atop our chicken, and we will be ready to go. So, as a rule, bring this to a boil, then reduce it to simmer. And you're going to simmer it until the liquid is reduced by roughly about half, maybe 5 or 10 minutes, depending on how low you have set your temperature on the simmer. Alright, so it's just starting to boil a little bit right now. And once it comes up to a boil in the entire Dutch oven, then we're going to go ahead and reduce the heat and let it simmer for a little bit before we, oh, see, bubbles are starting already, before we reduce the liquid to the consistency that we're looking for. Okay, while we are waiting for our sauce to get all the way ready for presentation, we can start on plating and slicing our chicken. So one thing we want to do when we are slicing the chicken, we want to go against the grain. The grain is going to go this way, up and down the length of the chicken. We want to cut across the grain. It's what they call mechanical tenderization. Normally they call it that when you're dealing with raw meat, and it should be plenty tender already. But instead of just cutting it crosswise, we're going to do what's called a bias cut. So instead of having our knife at a 90-degree angle to the protein, we're going to have it at a 45-degree angle. And we're going to slice it thinly down the entire length of the chicken breast. And again, you want to do everything you can to keep your knife at a 45-degree angle. And again, so you see my knife isn't so sharp. That's why I couldn't show you me butchering the bird, because it was a total butchery of the butchery. Like the Texas Chainsaw Massacre for chicken. Alright? So you want to get that, fan it out on your plate. Alright? Just like that. And we are going to now finish up our sauce and get ready to start plating. That's delicious. Okie dokie. So we have reduced our sauce by about half, and it is ready to be finished and to go atop our chicken. So the one thing we want to do first, before we add the butter to finish this sauce, is we want to dip our spoon. Alright, and we're worried about the back of the spoon. We're going to dip our spoon into the sauce. And then we're going to draw a little line in the spoon, in the sauce, and see if it holds the line. The sauce is kind of thin, but that's okay. It is holding the line pretty good. And we're going to give it a little bit of a taste. No other seasoning is required. Alright, perfect. Got a little bit of that wine. The chicken stock makes it very rich, as well as the shallots and the garlic. So, we're going to add a tablespoon or so of butter. And we're going to take it off the heat. And we're just going to swirl that butter around. We don't want to use a whisk at the risk that the butter will curdle in the sauce. So you just want to gently melt the butter into the sauce. And the butter is going to add a little more richness. That little bit of fat is going to also help thicken it. And if you like, you can go a little bit more butter. Sometimes I like to go with like a tablespoon and a half or so. So, get that in there. And again, we're not going to whisk it. We're just going to gently swirl it so that the butter incorporates and basically emulsifies within the sauce. Makes it a little thicker, a little richer, a little heartier. Alright? So, at this point, we are going to sauce our chicken. There we have it. There we have it. Alright, get a good look there. We got some nice braised chicken breasts with a nice hearty pan sauce and some steamed broccoli. Just a little dinner. Had a little salad while I was waiting for the sauce to finish coming together, and so now we are ready to eat. Yeah, baby. Alright guys, well that is a wrap on another episode of 2wlv's Kitchen. I hope you guys enjoyed the tutorial today and the demonstrations for the braised chicken with pan sauce. And so, yo, I like doing this. I hope you guys enjoy what I'm doing for you, and I hope you find it informative. Make sure you're following DJ12 on Instagram and Twitter at DJ2wlv. There will be an Instagram page dedicated solely to the cooking coming soon, but for right now, my current Instagram is my DJ page. And as we get more into doing this show, we're going to start getting our Instagram page all ready for you guys to follow if you're fans of 2wlv's cooking. So, like I said, that is a wrap. Thank you guys so much for joining me on this journey, this food prep journey. Make sure you always make sure that you're always taking care of your mise en place so that you don't spend very much time in the kitchen. I mean, of course, I'm going to edit this down. It's going to be compressed. I'm not sure what the length is going to be like. It took me about roughly an hour or so, but if everything is all in order, laid out, and you're ready to go, chicken's at room temp, and all of that old fly stuff, then the time you spend in the kitchen will be well worth it, and you won't spend that much time at all. So, that being said, we are going to sign off. Thank you again for watching 2wlv's Kitchen. Hope to see you next time. DJ12, I'm out. Deuces.